story, and so a story we will have. I hope you all have been doing good this morning. Um, I woke up and I was certainly in the mood for another Irish fairy and folk tale. Oh, it's not showing up too good, probably because, oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah, my computer webcam isn't the best. So, um, anyways, yes, Irish fairy and folk tales. Let's find a good one here real quick. Hmm. So almost in the very back of this book, there is the Giant's Stairs, and it's a very small section with only two stories in it called just Giants. And being pretty familiar with Norse giants, I'm curious about Irish giants. So I'm going to give this a quick read. This is The Giant's Stairs by T. Crofton Croker. On the road between Passage and Cork, there is an old mansion called Ronayne's Court. It may be easily known from the stack of chimneys and the gable ends, which are to be seen. Look at it which way you will. Here it was that Maurice Ronayne and his wife Margaret Gold kept house, as may be learned to this day from the great old chimney piece on which is carved their arms. They were a mighty worthy couple, and had but one son, who was called Philip, after no less a person than the King of Spain. Immediately, on his smelling the cold air of this world, the child sneezed, which was naturally taken to be a good sign of his having a clear head, and the subsequent rapidity of his learning was truly amazing. For on the very first day a primer was put into his hands, he tore out the ABC page and destroyed it, as a thing quite beneath his notice. No wonder, then, that both father and mother were proud of their heir. Who gave such indisputable proofs of genius, or, as they called it in that part of the world, genus. One morning, however, Master Phil, who was then just 7 years old, was missing, and no one could tell what had become of him. Servants were sent in all directions to seek him, on horseback and on foot, and they returned without any tidings of the boy, whose disappearance altogether was most unaccountable. A large reward was offered, but it produced them no intelligence, and years rolled away without Mr. and Mrs. Ronayne having obtained any satisfactory account of the fate of their lost child. Their lives at this time, near Carrigaline, one Robert Kelly. There lived at this time near Carrigaline one Robert Kelly, a blacksmith by trade, who was what is termed a handyman, and his abilities were held in much estimation by the lads and lasses of the neighborhood, for, independent of shoeing horses, which he did to great perfection, and making plough irons, he interpreted dreams for the young women, sung Arthur O'Bradley at their weddings, and was so good-natured a fellow at a christening that he was gossip to half the country round. Now, it happened that Robin had a dream himself, and young Philip Ronayne appeared to him in it, at the dead hour of the night. Robin thought he saw the boy mounted upon a beautiful white horse, and that he told him how he was made, a page to the giant Mahon MacMahon, who had carried him off, and who held his court in the hard heart of rock. "The 7 years my time of service are clean out, Robin," said he, "and if you release me this night, I will be making of you forever after." "And how will I know?" said Robin. cunning enough, even in his sleep. But this is all a dream. Take that, said the boy, for a token. And at the word, the white horse struck out with one of his hind legs, and gave poor Robin such a kick in the forehead that, thinking he was a dead man, he roared as loud as he could after his brains, and woke up, calling 1,000 murders. He found himself in bed, but he had the mark of the blow, the regular print of a horseshoe upon his forehead, as red as blood. And Robin Kelly, who never before found himself puzzled at the dream of any other person, did not know what to think of his own. Robin was well acquainted with the giant stairs, as indeed, who is not that knows the harbor? They consist of great masses of rock, which piled one above the other, rise like a flight of steps from very deep water against the bold cliff of Carrig Mountain. Nor are they badly suited for stairs to those who have legs of sufficient length to stride over a moderate-sized house, or to enable them to clear the space of a mile in a hop, step, and jump. But these feats the giant McMahon was said to have performed in the days of Finian glory, and the common tradition of the country placed his dwelling within the cliff up whose side the stairs led. Such was the impression which the dream made on Robin, that he determined to put its truth to the test. It occurred to him, however, before setting out on this adventure, that a plough-iron may be no bad companion, as, from experience, he knew it was an excellent knock-down argument, having on more occasion than one settled a little disagreement very quietly. So putting one on his shoulder, off he marched in the cool of the evening through Glan and Thwack, the Hawk's Glen, to Monkstown. Here an old gossip of his, Tom Clancy by name, lived, who on hearing Robin's dream promised him the use of his skiff, and moreover offered to assist in rowing it to the giant stairs. After a supper, which was of the best, they embarked. It was a beautiful still night, and the little boat glided swiftly along. The regular dip of the oars, the distant song of the sailor, and sometimes the voice of a belated traveler at the ferry of Carrigallow, alone broke the quietness of the land, and sea, and sky. The tide was in their favor, and in a few minutes Robin and his gossip rested on their oars, under the dark shadow of the giant stairs. Robin looked anxiously for the entrance to the giant's palace, which, it was said, may be found by one seeking it at midnight, but no such entrance could he see. His impatience had hurried him there before that time, and after waiting a considerable space in a state of suspense not to be described, Robin, with pure vexation, could not help exclaiming to his companion, "'Tis a pair of fools we are, Tom Clancy, for coming here at all on the strength of a dream." "And whose doing is it," said Tom, "but your own?" At the moment he spoke, they perceived a faint glimmering of light to proceed from the cliff, which gradually increased until a porch big enough for a king's palace unfolded itself almost on a level with the water. They pulled the skiff directly toward the opening, and Robin Kelly, seizing his plough-iron boldly, entered with a strong hand and a stout heart. Wild and strange was that entrance, the whole of which appeared formed of grim and grotesque faces, blending so strangely each with the other that it was impossible to define any. The chin of one formed the nose of the other. What appeared to be a fixed and stern eye, if dwelt upon, changed to a gaping mouth. The lines of the lofty forehead grew into a majestic and flowing beard. The more Robin allowed himself to contemplate the forms around him, the more terrific they became, and the stony expression of this crowd of faces assumed a savage ferocity as his imagination converted feature after feature into a different shape and character, losing the twilight in which the indefinite forms were visible. He advanced through a dark and devious passage, while a deep and rumbling noise sounded as if the rock was about to close upon him, and swallow him up, alive forever. Now indeed, poor Robin felt afraid. "Robin, Robin," said he, "if you were a fool for coming here, what in the name of fortune are you now?" But as before, he had scarcely spoken, when he saw a small light twinkling through the darkness of the distance, like a star in the midnight sky. To retreat was out of the question, for so many turnings and windings were in this passage, that he considered he had but little chance of making his way back. He, therefore, proceeded towards the bit of light, and came at last into a spacious chamber, for the roof of which hung the solitary lamp that had guided him. Emerging from such profound gloom, the single lamp afforded Robin abundant light to discover several gigantic figures seated round a massive stone table, as if in service, as if in serious deliberation. But no word disturbed the breathless silence which prevailed. At the head of this table sat Man McMahon himself, whose majestic beard had taken root, and in the case of ages grown into the giant stone slab. He was the first who perceived Robin, and instantly starting up, drew his long beard from out the huge piece of rock in such haste, with so sudden a jerk, that it was shattered into 1,000 pieces. "What seek you?" he demanded in a voice of thunder. "I came," answered Robin, with as much boldness as he could put on, for his heart was almost fainting within him. "I come," he said, "to claim Philip Ronayne, whose time of service is out this night." "And who sent you here?" "'Twas of my own accord I came," said Robin. "Then you must single him out from among my pages," said the giant, "and if you fix on the wrong one, your life is the forfeit. Follow me." He led Robin into a hall of vast extent, and filled with lights, along either side of which were rows of beautiful children, all apparently 7 years old, and none beyond that age, dressed in green, and every one exactly dressed alike. "Here," said Man, "you are free to take Philip Ronayne if you will, but remember, I give but one choice." Robin was sadly perplexed, for there were hundreds upon hundreds of children, and he had no very clear recollection of the boy he sought. But he walked along the hall by the side of Man as if nothing was the matter, although his great iron dress clanked fearfully at every step, sounding louder than Robin's own sledge battering on his anvil. They had nearly reached the end without speaking, when Robin, seeing that the only means he had was to make friends with the giant, determined to try what effect a few soft words might have. "'Tis a fine, wholesome appearance the poor children carry," remarked Robin, "although they have been here so long shut out from the fresh air and the blessed light of heaven. 'Tis tenderly your honor must have reared them." "Ay," said the giant, "that is true for you. So give me your hand, for you are, I believe, a very honest fellow for a blacksmith." Robin at first did not look much like the huge size of the hand. Robin at first did not much like the look of the huge size of the hand, and therefore presented his plough iron, which the giant seizing, twisted in his grasp, round and round again, as if it had been a potato stalk. On seeing this, all the children set up a shout of laughter. In the midst of their mirth, Robin thought he heard his name called, and all ear and eye, he put his hand on the boy who he fancied had spoken it, carrying out at that same time, "Let me live or die, but this is young Philip Ronayne." "It is Philip Ronayne, happy Philip Ronayne," said the giant. "It is Philip Ronayne, happy Philip Ronayne," said his young companion, and in an instant the hall became dark, crashing noises were heard, and all was in strange confusion. But Robin held fast his prize, and found himself lying in the gray dawn of the morning at the head of the giant stairs, with the small boy clasped in his arms. Robin had plenty of gossips to spread the story of his wonderful adventure, Passage, Monkstown, Carrigalane, and the whole barony of Kerikeri rung with it. "Are you quite sure, Robin, it is young Philip Ronayne you have brought back with you?" was the regular question, for although the boy had been 7 years away, his appearance now was just the same as on the day he was missed. He had neither grown taller nor older in look, and he spoke of things which had happened before he was carried off as one awakened from sleep, or as if they had occurred yesterday. "Am I sure? Well, that's a queer question," was Robin's reply, "seeing the boy has the blue eyes of the mother, with the foxy hair of the father, to say nothing of the pretty wart on the right side of his little nose." However, Robin Kelly may have been questioned, the worthy couple of Renayne's court doubted not that he was the deliverer of their child from the power of the giant McMahon, and the reward they bestowed on him equaled their gratitude. Philip Ronayne lived to be an old man, and he was remarkable to the day of his death for his skill in working in brass and iron, which it was believed he had learned during his 7 years' apprenticeship to the giant man McMahon. And that is the end of that. So, first of all, thanks for bearing with me with that. Um, that was an archaically written story with some pretty severely odd comma usage, as well as sentence structure. I'm just going to call it Yoda talk because how Yoda sometimes talks backwards. That's how some of these sentences were written. And I was trying to reroute those sentences in my head while reading it aloud, and I got kerfuffled a few times, I'll admit that. But the story itself was interesting, whereas giants and Norse mythology in general, that uses a lot of giants in their stories, everyone is devious and no one's really righteous or morally sound trying to do a good thing. Whereas in this story that we just read, I felt like everyone was a pretty good person. The giant wasn't needlessly cruel to the children, other than kidnapping them. The giant wasn't needlessly cruel to Philip. He did come up with a little game of cunning to see if Philip was worthy of rescuing the young boy, but he didn't attack him. He was fair when Philip found the boy. He let him go with him, and that was that. It was just a fun little game for him to play. So I gotta say, that story I thought was a little bit refreshing compared to the usual stories of giants that I read. But it could also be that this story in Irish folklore in general is a bit more contemporary than Norse mythology and the giants in those stories. So that's probably a bit what it was. Um, why we see the differences there. There's probably hundreds of years in between the both of them for the characters of giants to evolve into what we got in this story as opposed to what we usually get in Norse mythology. And speaking of Norse mythology, if I find the time later today, there is a really fun story that I hope to be reading and uploading from that mythos. So I hope I can get that out for you today. All right, but even if I don't, I hope you all stay happy, stay healthy, and stay in the pursuit of knowledge. Bye-bye, students.